All right, welcome in. Here we go. College football week 8. I'll repeat, week 8. How's that sitting with you right now? Halfway point. We are ready to roll. We got 5 games we're going to break down here on the show with you. It is the College Football Kickoff Show powered by WagerTalk.com. Appreciate you guys stopping by. We are going to dive into it with 3 of the best here to Thursday crew as we welcome in the pen. Ralph Michaels ready to roll here today, as is Drew Martin. Drew Martin Betts ready to go, and the one and only Mr. Rob Veno. And we've got 3 games that we're going to break down. 2 will go roundtable, guys, but we'll start with the game tonight. BC versus Va Tech here, Ralph Michaels. The Eagles traveling to Blacksburg. Used to be a very difficult place to go into and win a game at Lane Stadium. Maybe not so much anymore. Va Tech 3-3. I saw 7-point home favorite, somewhere around that in the during the week here. The over/under hovering around the 48.5, maybe even a little more money towards Virginia Tech as of this show. What gives? Virginia Tech underperforming, Boston College overperforming in your eyes? What are we going to get here?
You know, pretty much, Joe. Remember back in the 80s, maybe it was the 80s, maybe it was the 90s. I mean, VT was one of the rare BCS teams that would play on Thursday nights. That's why they were always so big. And Enter the Sandman would be crazy watching ESPN, and they really became sort of a cult following back then. I will mention one important thing, Joe. If you're looking at the uniforms tonight and you think, well, they're very similar colors, Boston College uses maroon, but Virginia Tech uses Chicago maroon. So just notice that difference this evening. All kidding aside, let's get right to it. Let's start with the database. Rested conference away dogs since 2015 have covered 54%. So there is a slight edge. When you look at rested conference away dogs off a loss versus an opponent off a win, that actually goes to 63% against the spread. And that's with over 140 games of sample size. So a very solid sample size. I am leaning Boston College here. There's no question. You know, when you look at Virginia Tech, you can say, well, they lost to Vanderbilt. Yeah, not as bad of a loss as it seemed in the opener. They lost to Rutgers at home, a game that they got outgained by 102 yards. That's an ugly loss. And they lost to Miami of Florida. Even though they only lost by 4 points, they got outgained by 114 yards. Then you look at last week's game against Stanford. It wasn't nearly as impressive as the final score. It was 31-7. But they only had 16 first downs in that game. They were plus 1 turnover, and actually Stanford had 18 first downs, so much closer in that. When you look at the strength of schedule, that really has me leaning Boston College. The teams have played very similar schedules. VT has played the 40th toughest schedule, Boston College number 46. But when you look at the yards per play diff, which is my number 1 go-to stat, subtracting offensive yards per game minus defensive, BC is actually plus 0.94 yards per play. That's number 45. VT is only plus 0.37. That is number 71. And Boston College, remember last week against Virginia, they actually had the lead and ended up allowing, I think, the last 24 points. They led 14-0. They end up losing that game 24-14. That is certainly disheartening. Their other loss was at Missouri, a 6-point loss, so a very good loss. When I looked at teams that had a lead of 7 or more points going into the fourth quarter but lost that game, as an away dog, those teams are 59.1%. So another positive situation. You know, BC with Cantelonis and drones for Virginia Tech. I actually give a slight edge to Cantelonis. Running backs, you have Ward and Richard on the BC side. You, of course, have Tootin on the Virginia Tech side. Tootin with better numbers for 1, but the combined running backs of Ward and Richards, again, very similar. The defenses, I look, and BC, number 66 compared to what their opponents average. VT a slight edge at 43. So I'm going to give the call here to BC plus the points. Both teams are off a bye, but again, getting 7 points in what I think is going to be a low-scoring game, I'll find value in that. And I think this line is actually probably 2 points too high with last week's Virginia Tech misleading win and BC's misleading loss.
It's going to be an interesting one here tonight. A lot of hopes there this year for Va-Tech, Ralph. We really thought with all the returning starters and drones, he was going to take that next step. There was going to be a big opportunity to upset some teams, and then they ran into Vanderbilt early in the year, and boy, it just didn't go any better after that here, losing some games we thought they should win. This is going to see if they've really turned a corner. I'm looking forward to this game here tonight. I think this is going to tell us a lot about whether or not we can take both of these teams seriously moving forward. A team we can't take seriously, unfortunately, Drew Martin. You know where I'm going with this. I mean, I hate to bring it up here, brother, but holy crap, Auburn. Like, what is going on with this team here? Now they got to take on Missouri this week. And here's the other thing I don't get. Missouri, too, is a little bit head-scratching. They've kind of come back to the pack and down to earth here over the last couple of weeks. So what gives in this game here? Is there any faith in Auburn to stay within this number? Or are we packing it in for Auburn this year here, Drew?
I'll tell you, Joe, with where you're going teeing this up, I mean, Auburn 2-4 straight up and against the spread, not looking pretty. But I'll tell you, if they didn't turn the ball over, they might be pretty good, Joe. I mean, you look at yards per play margin, plus 2.4, that's number 11 in the country. And it's not like they're playing nobody. Strength of schedule-wise, Auburn, there aren't many teams that have played a tougher strength of schedule. Look, if you're looking to bet on Auburn, now would be the time. Off of a bye week, up against the Missouri team that's off of back-to-back road games. So schedule spot-wise, I actually think it favors the Auburn Tigers in the Battle of Tigers. So Missouri, you know, they just played that weird at UMass game. They went up on the road, an SEC team. I don't know if you saw the clip, but they were going in the locker room. It looked like a high school team going in there. It was kind of head-scratching. I actually think their quarterback, Brady Cook, is a really good player. He just might be injured. I mean, he looked good against UMass. The offense moved the ball against UMass. Are they going to be able to do that against Auburn? I have my question marks here, Joe. I really do. We've seen Auburn take money. I think that's kind of, what I'm getting at in terms of it setting up for a team 2-4 off of a bye. They're a lot more talented than their record says they are. And if they don't turn the ball over, they could win some games here. In Missouri, when you look at kind of their schedule, it's pretty much the exact opposite for SEC teams. I mean, it was a competitive game against Boston College, against Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt took them to overtime. Texas A&M blew them out. Joe, look, I'm an Auburn alum. It's going to sound weird, but this is the time to bet on Auburn. When they've looked like this, they're off of a bye week. I actually think Auburn goes into Columbia, Missouri, and wins outright. I like them on the money line, but let's put the +5 out there, still available in the global market, in our pockets. I think the Auburn Tigers is the way to play this show.
God damn, Drew coming out over the top here with all sorts of Auburn Tigers. Not where I thought you were going to go with that one, Drew, but I do think you're right. A few less turnovers might have been a totally different ball game here this year. I'm kind of with you here. I don't trust Missouri over the last couple of weeks, so I'm with you here, Drew. I think there's possibility of a huge upset coming up. And another upset, very possible here as we welcome in one and only Mr. Rob Veno. And call me here crazy, Veno. Drew and I both understand that at some point this year, there's going to be a Mario Cristobal game. There is going to be a game in which Mario Cristobal figures out a way to screw his team over. He does it each and every year. He's going to forget the clock. He's not going to realize what time's left. He's going to try to run a play when all he needs to deal is kneel. You know it's coming, Vino. So my question is this the week they get caught? They've been playing with fire, the U. They take on Louisville. This is a scary game if you ask me, man. What are you thinking we're going to get here? Volume.
You got me?
I got you now. There you go.
All right. Listen, I was about to say, after.
Oh, and now he's frozen. But that was great because he was about to say something. There he goes. I think he was about to say that, and I know what was going to come out of his mouth. He was about to say that there's no way he's betting. I got you. I know you were going to say there's no way you're betting on Mario Cristobal. So go ahead. You left us hanging, Veno. What were you going to say there?
Something's going on around here. I'm in like a haunted house. Yeah, I was going to say that you didn't know where Drew was going, but I could pretty much guess you know where I'm going here, Joe. And I don't want to mess around with this side because it looks, and maybe it's too easy. Maybe it's far too easy to just play this game over 59.5 points. But that's the way you've got to look at this one, I would say. Each defense is likely to be under fire. If you go to subsets of overall statistics, you're going to find that each of these defenses ranks inside the top 5 in plays over 20 yards allowed. Miami's the worst in the country. They allow more 20-yard play, or excuse me, they're the best in gaining 20 yards per play or more. 53 of those by that offense led by Cam Ward. Louisville's 4th. They have 41 of those. The defenses both allow a bunch. The game plan, I mean, if you're trying to be defensive coach here, it's kind of simple. These teams can both rattle off big plays. Let's play umbrella-type defense, keep it underneath, et cetera, et cetera. The problem with that is both of them run the ball really well. Miami runs for 5.6 a pop. The other side runs for 5.4. And they both basically turn screens and slants into 20-yard gains. So keeping safeties back 15 yards to prevent big plays isn't really going to help against that. So I don't know what they're going to do. At some point, you have to respect the other side. Brom is, as we know, an offensive wizard, and what Cristobal's defense has shown us lately, even with a week off, Joe, after that Cal game, I'm not sure you can trust them in this particular spot, especially against teams that have so many different ways to move the football. Let's just look at the Hurricanes' last 2 games defensively. They allowed Virginia Tech 206 rushing yards and 188 passing yards and 34 points. That's Virginia Tech. But better than that, they allowed Cal to go for 7.5 per play. Cal only ran 49 plays and scored 38 points. So the defense has been horrendous. 297 passing yards to Cal. Certainly they're not a team known to be a 300-yard passing team. But Louisville's just as bad, guys. Louisville against Virginia last week, they give up 481. And 301 passing, 481 the week before to SMU. Nice offense. It's not Miami's offense. I just don't know how either defense is going to survive against the opposing offenses here. The last thing I'll say about Louisville's offense is they did gain near 400 yards against Notre Dame. And Notre Dame owns the 11th best defense in the country. So Louisville can move it. Miami can move it. Miami's played 5 consecutive games where the total landed 62 or higher. Every game they played landed 58 or higher. And some of those games they played with the opposition not helping at all. I mean, 6, 9, 10. They did a lot of the work themselves. Louisville, last 4 games a little different. Only 1 game has gone 60+. However, they're going to have to score to keep up here. And the way Miami's defense has given up red zone touchdowns the last 2 games, 6 times inside the red zone, 4 touchdowns allowed. That's been Louisville's biggest problem, guys, is getting in there and not really putting up touchdowns. So I think maybe that changes here. I really don't understand how the odds maker left us with 59.5 in this game. This game should be more like 63.5, 64. I think it gets over. It gets into the 60s here, a game where the offenses just dominate one more time.
And it just the problem I'm having too is that the public is running and taking the road chalk here, and they're all betting Miami, which is scary to me from a side perspective. From a total perspective, I can't imagine a game on the board I would want to sweat an under on less than watching these two teams. And I guarantee you what's going to happen. They're going to score 40 points in the fourth quarter, too, just to piss everyone off who takes the over. You and I both know what's going to happen there. It's been a pretty good home field advantage for Louisville over the years under Brom. I'm with you. I just don't see how we're not getting points in this game. But, man, oh, man, if there was a dog on the card ripe, it would be Louisville here, as I'm seeing almost 80% of the tickets right now on Miami, and that scares the crap out of me here in this one. So we've got 3 games in the books here so far. We've got a couple of big games coming up that we're going to break down with you guys. We're going to go round table, and everybody's going to want to hear what do we do with Michigan and Illinois, battle of Big Ten teams, as well as Alabama and Tennessee. But I do want to remind you guys, if you could hit that like button, do the thing with the buttons there, the thumbs up, to subscribe, to follow, all that good stuff. We'd certainly appreciate it. If you're joining us on live here on the show on this Thursday, go ahead and drop anything in the comments. Any games that you have in the comments that you want to ask these guys about, we'll get to them. If you're watching on the replay, we're in the comment section right up until kickoff. So if you've got any comments, any questions on games, drop them there. And, of course, we will get back to you here within the next 24 to 48 hours. A lot of great games this week, guys. So if you got some questions in this week 8 of the college football season, drop them below. All right, let's dive into it here, guys, because Bama and Tennessee. I've been on shows for like the last, 2 years telling everyone, man, it's free money. Josh Heupel teams in the first half. I don't care what the number is. Just lay it. All they do is destroy teams early. Okay. And the last 2 weeks now, they haven't scored a friggin' point in the first half of a game. Why? Because they're playing SEC teams, Drew. What is with Tennessee? They can beat Chattanooga. But hell no, they ain't beating SEC defenses, so something's wrong here. There's a disconnect with this team. Are they not good? Are they overrated? Is Alabama a team that can come in here and do the same and shut them down early like Florida did? What do you think with this Tennessee team?
I'm right what you're talking about, Joe. Josh Heupel, the secret is out. You want to be betting on Josh Heupel offenses when they can run up the score. He's been doing that. Yes, at Tennessee in the past when he was at UCF, running the score up on inferior opponents. You want to be laying points with a Josh Heupel offense. When he goes up against defenses that can, hold his offense at bay, it is a whole different story. Look at the point totals against the SEC teams he's played so far this season. 25, 17, and 14. This is a totally different offense against more talented defenses. Now, is Alabama's defense more talented? They should be. They have more talented players than a lot of the other teams, but they've had their issues. I mean, they got upset against Vanderbilt. They're already 0-1 in the Volunteer State. Keep that in mind. So this is a tough one for me, Joe. I will say I like Alabama in this matchup. Minus 3-point favorites. You don't have to lay that hook on the 3. I think they go into Knoxville and win it. Keep in mind, guys, I mean, both Alabama and Tennessee, I'd say more Tennessee fans consider this a big rivalry. But when you've lost 16 of the last 17 meetings, I don't know how big of a rivalry it really is. And Tennessee going on the road, losing to Arkansas, that was head-scratching to me. I don't think the Razorbacks have all that great of a team this season. Overall, Joe, I think Alabama, this defense kind of wakes up a little bit and plays like they did in the first half against Georgia, so to speak. I think minus 3 on Alabama is the way to go here.
Liking Art laying it with Bama here. It does feel like, Ralph, if there's a spot for Bama to get right, maybe this is the time, given the fact that, I mean, Tennessee against better teams, it's not there. Maybe they're a little bit overvalued here, or do you think this is a great time for Tennessee to get right in this game?
No, I think your first statement is more accurate, Joe. You're talking about Tennessee making up a step in class. So let's take a look. You mentioned The last 2 weeks, they were outscored 6-0 in the first half. Chattanooga, they were up 45-0. Kent State 65-0 in the first half. So 110-0. Those are called stat patterns, where you look at year-to-date stats, and yes, Tennessee is number 9 at plus 2.51 yards per play, but they've only played the number 52 schedule. That's probably as weak. Missouri's was like 100. So when we were talking about Missouri's schedule, that's crazy bad. But again, Tennessee at number 52, 3 games in the SEC schedule is not good. Bama's played the number 14 schedule, and they're actually better at yards per play. The interesting thing here is tempo. Tennessee is number 8, running 74 plays per game. And Bama is actually number 124, completely separate ranges of the tempo. They average only 60 plays per game. This, of course, the third Saturday in October. And you look at Kalen DeBoer, he is actually 10-1 straight up and 9-2 ATS versus ranked teams. And I went to the database. This one actually leans Tennessee. But just to let you guys know this info, when you have 2 AP top 12 teams, since 2021, the home team is 20-12, 62.5%. And I went back to 2016, a top 12 home dog versus another AP top 12 team. They've gone 20-14, 59% against the spread. But let me put it in perspective how poorly these two have played the last 2 weeks. You look at Bama's last 2 games. They, of course, played Vanderbilt and South Carolina. You look at Tennessee's last 2 games, at Arkansas where they lost and home against Florida where they could have lost. Combined, in those 4 games, these 2 teams were a favorite of 74 points. 2 teams, 2 games, 74 points. Collectively, these 2 teams got outscored by 2 points per game. That is just damn ugly in the SEC when you're looking at 2 teams. I give a slight edge to Alabama. I'll agree with Drew there. And I'm going to stick with what you pointed out, Joe. Tennessee has really struggled in the first half. Bama wants to play slow. I do like under first half in this game to go along with the opinion on the Crimson Tide.
All right, leaning Crimson Tide. I mean, Veno, it is quite both things can be true, right? Both these teams could be not even close to what we thought they were, right? That could, as Dennis Green said, right? Both his team is not what we thought it was going to be. And Alabama and Tennessee could very well be fitting into this category. I do happen to like Tennessee's defense. I think that's a real defense. I just don't know. Is there any way we're sweating out an over in this game? Do we trust the offenses more than the defenses here, Veno?
Well, it's hard because you have strength on strength here, right? We can't find strength versus weakness in this. That's a problem. So it makes it difficult to get up in points. So if you just look at Alabama's offense solely, you would say, yeah, Alabama's a great scoring machine. They can score. If you look at Alabama's defense, you say, yeah, they're giving up points. They'll allow them. But then the opposite can be said of Tennessee. Offense isn't scoring. Defense prevents points. It's a tough matchup here, Joe. I mean, I think the biggest problem with Tennessee right now from the offensive standpoint is not really the run game. The run game's pretty good. But they don't throw the ball at all. And for a Josh Heupel offense to not be able to throw the ball, and with all the hype that was surrounding, now let's get this right. Nico Iamaleava. I can't say it 5 times fast, but I could say it once or twice slow. That quarterback play has been terrible, Joe. It's the last 3 games, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Florida. And again, Alabama's not playing good defense, but Florida and Arkansas are not a who's who of defensive football. All right. 58.6% completions, 61.5% completions, no touchdowns the last 2 weeks, 1 interception. That's not Josh Heupel offense. So, you get this Alabama team who has been giving up yards and points in bushels. Last week against South Carolina, they hold on for dear life against Lenora Sellers, who really is not an accurate quarterback, but yet South Carolina marches for 374 yards. We saw Diego Pavia, 418 yards. Georgia, who hasn't done a thing offensively all season long, 519 yards. It's such a contradiction where total is concerned, and even side. If I was going to play and I didn't play this game, I would prefer to take the home defense with Tennessee and think that at some point in time they can make a play through the air. If the game does go slow, pace-wise, which is another thing we should bring up here. Generally, Josh Heupel's team is like top 10 in seconds per snap. This year, they barely make it inside the top 25. So they've slowed down a little bit. And again, I think the quarterback just isn't playing well at this point in time. So if it slows down a little bit, maybe, that's helpful to Tennessee. I think in the long run, total's tough. I know it's been bet up a little bit, but when you get into those really high 50s, those key numbers, games fall on those things every single week. They'll break your heart. So I don't think I'd get involved there. Maybe home dog and their defense in this game, Tennessee, even though a lot of money's pushed towards Bama.
Yeah, I mean, 4-12 against the number in the last 16 as an underdog. That's Tennessee and Josh Heupel. In the meantime, you got Alabama now 14-5-1 against the number head-to-head against Tennessee here in the last 20 times that they have met. I don't see this being like the Hendon Hooker game where they lit him up for 52 points. That ain't happening. And I'm with you, Vino. Komasayama, what'd you say his name was? That guy. I don't think Josh Heupel trusts him. I think that's what it's come down to, and I think that's what you're starting to see because it doesn't look anything like a Josh Heupel run offense lately. So I think there's some trust issues with the young quarterback in that one. If you have a question, guys, in the chat room, you're joining us live, drop it in on these games. If you're watching on the rewatch, go ahead, drop any questions you got in the comments section where we'll be checking them right up until kickoff, communicating with you guys. Shout out to Grind It at All Times, who says pens up, people. Ralph Michaels is on the show on Instagram, as well as Nico and company hanging out with us there on TikTok. We certainly appreciate you guys. I know GT Hertz is in the chat room there on YouTube. Always a pleasure to see you guys. And Chris Brady also in the house. Bama 5-1 to the over this year. Tennessee, Bama 7-3 to the over in the last 10 that he is pointing out here. And yes, I thought South Carolina's defense, I think that's a real defense, holding teams to about 16 points under their season average. That 27 points was nothing to be ashamed about against South Carolina there. So it'll be interesting to see what they can do against this Tennessee defense at home. All right, we're unsure of points in that game. I don't know what the hell we're going to get in this next game here, Ralph. So I'm hoping you can point us in the right direction because I give up on where are they finding these quarterbacks in Michigan, Ralph? I'm just, were they pulling dudes off the street? Like, can anybody pass? Is that what's going on right now? What are we doing with Michigan, Illinois, who apparently is also going to be without their top running back again this week? Is this just a dead under, or am I missing something here, Ralph?
No, the total's low for a reason, Joe.
Yeah.
But let's see. I think maybe they could go to Cass High School and find a better quarterback. Let's see. Warren, a 6.2 yards per attempt. Orgy, 53% completions, a 3.4 yards per attempt and 43 passes. And Jack Tuttle, again, he's only played the one game, 55%, but he's been in the system for a couple years. I think Jack Tuttle, who's likely to get the start, actually can help Michigan's offense a little bit. You look at the Washington game, and putting up 287 yards on the road is not good. But that's what happens when you play Fresno State. They did play a couple tough teams at home against Texas and USC and Minnesota. But when your first 5 games are at home and then you have to go to road for Washington, it makes a difference. Now, again, you have another road game. But, again, Illinois does not scare me. Altmaier has completed 67%. With a 14-1 ratio. But you look at the Illinois team, and without Fegan there, the guy's averaging 4.6 yards per carry. He has 67 rush attempts on the season, and that's missing last game. That's still 26 more than Josh McCray. So, the offense last week without him against Purdue, they did put up 556 yards. But, Illinois, the Bielema-led Fighting Illini, prior to that, allowed 21 to Penn State, 24 to Nebraska, 9 to Central, 17 to Kansas, and shut out Eastern Illinois. So let's see. If you want to figure out what college football is about, you take an Illinois team that I think was like number 10 or 11 on defense against a Purdue offense that was like number 120 in scoring offense. And what happens? They give up 49 yards. That's why I have no hair, because you keep pulling your hair out in those kind of situations that even we can't explain. We can study the games, we can watch the film, we can watch the game, but there's still performances like this. The one thing that does scare me is this. Michigan's defense is still solid. They have 17 sacks. That is top 20 in the FBS this year. Illinois' O-line, they've given up 19 sacks, guys. That is number 122. And the last 2 weeks against Penn State and Purdue, they've given up 12 sacks. So if you take away your best running back and your offensive line can't pass block, now you're forced to throw the ball against a very good rush defense. I'm going to say this. I have more confidence in Michigan's D and lack of confidence in Illinois' offense that I will actually go on record here and take Illinois under team total. So, if you take the full game total, some of them don't have them yet. I think they're up at DraftKings and FanDuel. But just again, team totals, 95% of the time, you take the team total, you take the full game total, you subtract out the spread, you divide it by 2, and you add in that spread to the favorite. That is where you're going to be about the team total. But I think Michigan off the loss is a more motivated team than Illinois off a fortunate win where they lost a big lead and then came back to win by 1.
It's a tough spot here, Ralph. I am with you here trying to figure out what's going on with these two teams here. Patrick Keeley in the house, Uber Transport. Also, you guys have some questions on YouTube Shorts. Hang in there. We'll get to them. Also, some of the other questions coming in here on Instagram and TikTok. We'll get to those two in a minute as Drew, help me out in this game here. Michigan versus Illinois. If it was the last, 3 to 4 years, I think I'd have a pretty good idea what to expect from Michigan. I have no idea what to expect from Michigan here. I don't really have any idea either with what we're going to get from Illinois and Brett Bielema, except maybe a choke job. So how do you approach this game this weekend?
Sure, Joe. I mean, I think this is a fascinating matchup here in Champaign. And you bring up Brett Bielema and his team 5-1. You look at their record, but however, you got to keep in mind 2 of those wins were in overtime. So they're a couple bounces away from being a 500 team. And if they had 3-3 next to their name, I think you'd have to be laying some more points than just 3.5 here with Michigan. I mean, this is an Illinois team that was competitive against Purdue, had to go to overtime, and Purdue had a backup quarterback in that game. So how good is Illinois? I have my questions here, and I have my questions about their offensive line being able to stand up to Michigan's defensive front. So when you start talking about, defensive line pressure from Michigan really be on your side of the bet, I like the Wolverines here, Joe. I really do. Plus the fact, look at this spot. They're off of their bye week with making the change at the quarterback position in their last game. A tough trip out to Seattle. Other than that loss, I mean, this is a Michigan team that's won 24 straight, in conference. And Jack Tuttle, he's a guy, he's 25 years old. I mean, a redshirt senior here with the whole COVID issues. He was, the San Diego player of the year in high school. He's bounced around a little bit, Utah, and now finds himself here at Michigan, and he is a guy that can throw the ball down the field. He's like an honor roll guy. Like, I don't think he's going to make big mistakes. And when you get that change, it's a sports better. That's something you got to pay attention to. And I actually think this is going to be a boost for the Michigan offense here. I mean, Orji just couldn't throw the ball down the field. This is a different looking offense, at least in the short sample that we have so far with Tuttle at the QB position. So all of that, change. Michigan, I think, is more talented, particularly in the trenches. I think Michigan's the side here, Joe. I really do. And it's -3 and a hook. If you look at the WagerTalk live odds screen, at pretty much all the books, but there is one global book out there that's still hanging a -3 with a little bit of juice. Guys, I'd go get that as soon as possible. Lay it with the Wolverines. And if you give me the best number, Joe, -3 is still available.
All right, -3. Yep, I'm seeing it as well. Still available there. And Rob Veno, and by the way, shout out to G. Hurt. Apparently, he thinks I would be the third-string quarterback in Michigan today if I actually showed up at practice, and that's a fair assessment, G. Hurt. I'm not going to lie to you. That's because nobody else can throw the ball there. Absolutely in Michigan, which is kind of laughable. But Veno, could it have been that maybe Bielema's Illinois team looking past Purdue last week a little bit to this game? Because if you look at the remaining schedule, I think they have Oregon next week. And then the rest of the way, they're very winnable games, which could put them in the bottom half of the playoff spot here in one of the, a 9, 10, 11, 12, somewhere in that ballpark there. So, but they got to win this game, don't they? I mean, this is the game they got to win. If they lose to Oregon and then run the table, they're very much in the playoffs. Can they win this game, though, in your opinion?
Well, a couple of reasons I'll say no. I tend to agree with what Ralph said and with what Drew said, and I'll even pile on and add more to the pro-Michigan side, anti-Illinois side. First thing I looked at was strength of schedule. Michigan's been tested. Right? Michigan had to play Texas. Michigan had to play USC. Michigan had to play Washington. Illinois, not so much. They played Penn State. Here's the kicker, guys, and I get Jack Tuttle is the new quarterback for Michigan, and yes, he could help the passing game, and yes, he's had an extra week, and yes, he's 25 years old and probably has better knowledge of recognizing defenses than either of the other Michigan quarterbacks. But do you really need much more than Alex Orji in this game if that was all you had? Illinois, the last 2 weeks, 239 yards allowed on the ground to Penn State, 239 yards on the ground allowed to Purdue. Drew hit on it a little bit. It was a freshman backup quarterback. Hudson Card didn't go. How about these numbers by Ryan Brown? And Joe, if they were looking ahead, it was a pretty good look ahead because they didn't bother to stop this guy. Ryan Brown, 18 of 26 for 365 passing yards in his very first start. But forget the passing yards. The guy ran 17 times for 118 yards. And that kid's responsible, if I do the math in my head right here, for 483 total yards in his first start. Alex Orji can run the football. So Tuttle probably is going to be a good choice here. But the point being, Illinois can't stop the run. And if you can't stop the run, you're not going to be, because all they're going to do is run. They're going to run it down your throat until you prove you can stop it. They haven't stopped it in 2 weeks. If you added a running quarterback to that, it would be even worse for Illinois here. So I think the combination of strength of schedule, Michigan battle tested, Illinois won't hold up at the point of attack. Ralph pointed out the amount of pressure that Michigan could put on Altmaier. Listen, Altmaier's numbers look fantastic, right? 14 TDs, 1 interception. Guess what? The only defense he played comparable to this one was Penn State's. And in that Penn State game, here's his numbers. He throws 0 touchdowns, 1 interception, and doesn't throw for 100 yards. So I'm going to say Michigan's probably in a very good matchup situation here. Not sure I like the coaching on the Michigan side as of yet. It hasn't proven to me that it's, losing Jim Harbaugh is helpful. But Brett Bielema, to me, this is a guy built on trench play. His offensive line, his defensive line, a little shaky, guys. I think Michigan's probably the right side here. I agree with Drew and Ralph.
Oh, all right. Looking with Michigan to get it done. Sorry, Bielema. Ralph is waving the pen. We know
Correction
what that means. He's got something. Go ahead, Ralph. What do you got for us?
No connection, Rob. I agree with you. I just want to quantify something as well. Sure. I was looking up stats as Rob was talking. Michigan's YPA, yards per attempt passing this year, 5.2. That's number 133 in football. Who's last? New Mexico State. In the last 4 years, this is the second lowest YPA number anyone has had. The only team worse in the last 4 years was last year's Iowa team, and we know how solid that offense was. So that just puts it in perspective how bad the Michigan pass offense has been.
Yeah, it's not been good at all, and we'll see if it gets any better here with a change at quarterback. But there you got it. We got 5 games across the board that we covered here, guys. We're going to turn to those of you joining us live here, but don't forget, if you are watching on the replay, drop any questions you have on these games in the comment section, because we're going to be checking it right up until kickoff on Saturday. So plenty of big games here and plenty of questions, guys. We'll start throwing your way here on some of the guys in the chat room, and we'll do Arkansas LSU, who G. Ert says is in the sandwich spot of all sandwich spots. I don't know how many more times we've got to watch the market disrespect Arkansas. Now they're, again, night game at home as an underdog, which Pittman has been nothing but money. This happened, I think, a couple of weeks ago, too. They were getting a ton of points. Nobody was giving them any credit. And what did they end up doing? They ended up winning the game outright. I don't know what it is, Drew, with the market not liking Arkansas, but it's kind of hard not to like them because I just don't think LSU is that good. I'm sorry. I thought they were fortunate enough that Ole Miss shot themselves in the foot on a number of occasions, but they were outplayed in that game last week at home. And I think they're going to be outplayed by Arkansas in this one here. What do you think?
Yeah, it's tough to go, I guess, to make a huge argument against you. I guess, part of the reason people not liking the Razorbacks is their offense, Joe. Being able to put up points against SEC opponents has been a little bit difficult for them. I'm with you on that SEC game with LSU against Mississippi. I mean, winning in overtime, it really could have gone either way. Other than that, what has LSU done? I mean, against quality competition, not much. I mean, against South Carolina, it was down to the stretch as well. And then at USC, we all remember that game, week 1, not looking too strong. So it really all of their offensive production is against lesser competition. And we've seen this Arkansas defense play pretty well. So it is a tough one for LSU. Going on the road, we've seen Arkansas play well in Fayetteville at night. This is a tough matchup for the Bayou Bengals here. It's not one I'll likely be involved with, though, Joe.
Yeah, it is a tough one because I still don't like LSU's defense. And by the way, they got that game to overtime on a 4th and 6, and then a touchdown pass to tie it with little time left on it. So I do think Arkansas with a week to prepare is very dangerous as a dog at home. I like this spot for them. I can tell you there was another question coming in, I believe, on Uber. Was it Patrick Keatley in YouTube Shorts? And I'll ask you here, Veno. Indiana has been a cash cow this year. Absolute cash cow if you've been backing them. But the problem is so is Nebraska, who has also pretty much been a pretty good covering machine here. I think there's a big difference in quarterbacks in this game. I think there is both teams coming off a bye. I've got the offense and special teams of Indiana at home with Cignetti much better than what they've got rolling right now with that freshman quarterback, who I think is going to be good. But call me crazy, it's only his second road start, and he wasn't that good against Purdue in his first road start. So what gives with Indiana at home laying almost a touchdown against Nebraska this week?
Yeah, I'll start with this. I think that as far as college coaches go, Matt Rule is in that upper tier. He was the guy who first figured out 2 games into Deion's career how to shut his son down at quarterback. Nebraska 2 years in a row has just been an absolute thorn in Shedeur Sanders' side. And Curt Cignetti, as much as you have to love him and the job he's done at Indiana and the job he did prior at JMU, he probably has a head coach on the other sideline that can give him a battle here. Look at who he's had to face. And I'll give Braun for Northwestern some credit, but I'm not giving any credit to Mike Loxley. I'm not giving any credit to Biff Poggi for Charlotte. I'm not giving any credit to Deshaun Foster at UCLA, Western Illinois. Mike McIntyre's dealing, we saw last night with Florida International, just tons of problems. So this is a matchup where Matt Rule, I think, will game plan for Indiana better than anybody has game planned so far this season. That being said, I think we get the answer to our question here. Is Indiana, Curtis Rourke and company on that offensive side good enough to overcome the defensive scheme that Nebraska is going to lay out there this week? It'll be interesting to see. And that's a lot of guesswork that goes into that, Joe, because I could see it going both ways. I could see Indiana being that good. I could see Rule getting to the quarterback here and causing Indiana some disruption that they have not faced at all so far this season. But to your point, the Nebraska offensive side of this is a question as well.
Yeah.
They haven't been very good. They're more dependent on the run than, because the passing offense isn't very good. So that's a question mark. I think 7 points happens to be a little too much in this instance. I would prefer to be on the Nebraska side because I think it might end up in a defensive battle. I don't know that Indiana's going to roll for 40 here. The only thing that scares me is that playbook. After watching James Madison last year when they went 12-1, and now watching Indiana this year, that playbook of Cignetti is unbelievably deep. And maybe Rule just can't game plan for anything. But that being said, I think I would choose to take the points with Nebraska.
Well, I just don't. What's the point of having a 50-year-old quarterback in college here if you can't rely on him to handle the blitz? Like, I don't, you know what I mean? What's the point there, Veno? Ralph, we do have a question coming in. Uber Transport is asking, we just saw, and I believe G. Hurt and Company in the chat room saw it earlier when the show started, a big move against Oregon, Purdue. This is almost up to 30 points now. Oregon laying 30 on the road against Purdue. So that game opened up 24.5-25, Ralph. It's now up to almost 30. The total's also being pushed up. You want to talk about letdown spot, if there is such a thing. Is this a letdown for Oregon? I mean, they have not exactly been winning games by this margin all year, which was part of the problem last week against Ohio State, where we're going, everything is a sweat. Is it going to be a sweat laying 30 here against Purdue on the road?
I'm looking real quick, Joe, what away favorites do off a win against the top 10.
Ooh.
And quite simply, an away favorite off a win against the top 10 has gone 48.6% against the spread. That goes all the way back to 2000.
Wow.
And if you just give me 1 second, I'm going to look to see a much more recent pattern. 1, 2, 2, 3, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. All right. Let me go back to 2013 and let you know that an away favorite off a win against the top 10 team is 11, 20, and 1, 35.5% against the spread. So is it a letdown spot? I would say so. And when I look at the database, the highest line since 2013 in that role was only as a 17-point favorite. So they're going into historic type numbers. I mean, going all the way back for 11 years, away favorites off a win against the top 10, highest line in that time span, 17. And as you said, they're laying 30. To me, there's no way I would bet Oregon in this role. If you like Oregon, I would think about first quarter or first half. But I think clearly this is a game that they pull the dogs off. Yes, they have Illinois at home the next week, but that is a legitimate defense. So obviously you didn't hide anything. Whatever you could show against Ohio State, you did. But you have that Illinois game with a good defense on deck. So if there's anything else you have hidden, it would be that. So no way I'd go with Oregon. I'm not going to get the Purdue side. If I did have interest in Oregon, I'd look at first quarter or first half.
Yeah, I mean, that is a monster number, Drew. It feels like a dog or pass spot here. I mean, Oregon, sure, we're not worried about them winning. But, we did see Purdue give up a pretty good fight here against a conference opponent in Illinois. I mean, they're not going to roll over, and Oregon has not been blowing anybody out by any stretch of the imagination. I don't know. It feels like the back door would be wide open in the second half all game in this one on the road, Drew.
Absolutely. I mean, Joe, what was the stat that Ralph threw out in terms of top 10 teams on the road? What was that again, Ralph?
Off the win of a top 10 team, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're an away favorite off a win against the top 10 team, you're 11-20 against the spread, 35.5%. How about this, guys? The average line of those 32 games is -6, and they are only 14-18 straight up. So you've only won 44% of the games with an average line of -6. That just shows you, again, they're not going to get upset, but that shows you the potential to play against those teams off a big top 10 win as an away favorite moving forward.
Wow.
Sure. I like that stat, Ralph. And to tell you the truth, Joe, that's a stat that would keep me off of the Oregon side. Because when I was first looking at this, I was thinking about the Ducks. I was just thinking that's a turning point, like a big win in the season. And they kind of, Dylan Gabriel back there, I feel like they do possess the offense to kind of run it up a little bit if they want to. But yeah, I think that's a legitimate kind of trend to pay attention to. Plus, we got to keep in mind what that Big Ten conference traveling 2 time zones. It's been a little bit rough. We just saw Oregon be the beneficiary of that. Now they're going on the other side here. So that's another trend that's going to keep me off the Duck side.
Great point there,
hey, Joe,
Drew. Yep, Ralph.
Just FYI, in those games with the AP teams as an away favorite off a top 10 team, 20 overs, 11 unders, and a push. So 64.5% to the over.
That's good. The over is moving up here as well. So points maybe, and more points here. A little less defense in that one. That game again tomorrow night, I believe, 8:00 Eastern time. Oregon taking on Purdue. That line is creeping up to 30. All right, guys, there you got it. 5 games. We threw in a few more questions for you. Don't forget to hit that like button. And we'll go around the horn here because, Ralph, start us off here over at WagerTalk.com on your page. We got college football. We got NFL Week 7. What do you got locked, loaded, ready to roll here for us?
67% run on all plays since September 20th. So that's almost a 30-day period. And I do want to say this. I am so appreciative and thank you to everybody that took advantage of my 5% winner on Tuesday. It was a $5 play. An incredible number of you got it. And again, thank you. And guys, if you're new to Wager Talk, make sure, set your alarm on your phone. Tuesday at noon Eastern, make sure you head to Wager Talk. As each and every Tuesday now, every capper is allowed to load a $5 package. Check out Wager Talk. Again, check my card out now, but make sure you check out WagerTalk.com each and every Tuesday.
Shedrick Bryant joining us in the chat room, in full agreement with you, Rob Veno. Miami and the total over against Louisville. That was exactly your feelings on that game when we broke it down earlier. I will correct me if I'm wrong here, Vino. I'm willing to go out on a limb. Is there a WNBA play, possibly in a closeout game, locked and loaded for you after Ionescu hits a Steph Curry 3 from section 303 to give the Liberty the lead last night? Is there a one final WNBA play locked and loaded for you this week?
You know what? There could be, Joe. It's not there yet. But last night, as somebody who avoided, the landmine of laying 3.5 by playing money line with the Liberty, they win by 3. So we got the win rather than crying about losing by half a point in that one. So it was a good, we'll take Sabrina and that, 35-footer every time, whatever it was. But what is loaded is tonight's Thursday night football. Up and available. It's been up for a couple of days. Saw something there early in the week that I liked. And also tonight's Major League Baseball action. We got 2 games in play. I do have one of them up right now. It's been a good run the last 7 days, guys, plus 24.7 units over the course of the last 7 days, all sports. So seeing it pretty well right now. A couple of plays up there tonight.
All right. And Drew, speaking of baseball, your Daily Diamond. You are no doubt still plenty to be decided in Major League Baseball here. We still got to get to the World Series. You've been on it all year, so you're going to have a couple of plays tonight for us heading into the weekend series here?
Actually, Joe, like the baseball coming into the playoffs, I feel like it's been tough going back and forth. So I'm passing on it in terms of the playoffs. But I'll tell you, Drew's Daily Diamond, man, it's been on a roll. I know a lot of people are out there watching, and I appreciate everybody that's chiming in the comments. But it's the show's on a 26-12, 68% run, double-digit units to the positive, giving all of that out for free. And really, guys, the show going every day, WagerTalk YouTube channel, is pretty much like my long list. I go into the night's handicap the night before, and I pretty much put out all the games, and I give out the information on what I'm on what I'm looking at, and then I go to my client card and give out the client plays, which Joe this week. Oh man, sizzling 7-0-1, 100%. So it's been a nice run this week, man, and that includes a football heater, college football and the NFL, man, 18-6. That's 75% off the perfect weekend. So we're in with a 4% big bet in the NFL game tonight. We got Fridays coming in here soon, and going to lock in the Saturday card momentarily by end of day today. So got a lot coming to you. 5% Monday Night Football as well is locked and loaded. So it's going to be hopefully keep this hot streak going into the weekend, Joe. It's going to be a fun time, guys.
I love it. Shedrick Bryant, will I be at the Miami FSU game next weekend? Bet your ass I will, Shedrick. And also, it's got to be basketball season because AOD is in the chat room talking up the Pistons in 5 again. So I don't know that I can handle NBA talk right about now. But, of course, we'll have much more NBA action soon enough as the season kicks off on the 22nd. Until then, though, guys, don't forget, smash that like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so. Make plans. We got, of course, the Friday group coming up tomorrow. 5 more college football games in Week 8 we're going to break down for you. Make plans to come back and join us. And if it's big game previews you're looking, you don't have to go very far. Just click that video on your screen right now. Get access to an entire playlist of all the big games coming up this weekend. And until tomorrow, guys, best of luck with all your plays tonight. We'll see you again soon. All right, boom.